You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
What Trump really revealed in his secret documents. And what he left out, based on an article by Jake Johnson. Trump's election panic is a power grab in plain sight. Power, not procedure. Donald Trump did not give a speech about election integrity. He used the presidency to manufacture a justification for taking more control over elections he does not trust because they can reject him. That is the central fact here. States currently run U.S. elections, and Trump openly wants the federal government to take over that power. Everything else and the speech serves that goal. The story is not that elections are suddenly exposed. The story is that Trump is trying to convert his loss into an argument for centralized control, voter suppression and loyalty testing. The convenient Chinese Specter. Trump claimed China had orchestrated a plot involving 220 million U.S. voter files and manufactured the illegal ballots for Joe Biden. The reporting says the documents released by the White House did not support that claim, and that the intelligence itself was described by experts as raw material, not proof. Raw intelligence is not a verdict. Trump knows that. He is betting that repetition can do the work of evidence. This is the old authoritarian move in updated language. Take ambiguity, launder it through presidential authority and present it as revelation. The target is not China. The target is the legitimacy of elections he lost. Elections as a pretext for suppression. The Save America Act appears in the story for a reason. Trump has obsessively worked to push it, and critics correctly identify it as a voter suppression bill. That is what this is really about, not security but selective access. Not resilience but control. Rep. Roger Krishnamurthy's this statement gets closer to the truth than Trump's entire speech. Foreign adversaries did target democracy, but there is no evidence they changed votes. Trump's response to that reality is not to strengthen the system. It is to use foreign interference as cover for weakening the parts of the system that let people vote freely. The threat to the press. Trump also attacked major networks for not airing his speech live and in full, then called for the revocation of NBC and ABC's licenses. That is not a side remark. It is part of the same governing instinct. If institutions will not amplify his narrative, he treats them as enemies to be punished. This is the behavior of a president who expects submission, not scrutiny. Sanders called the threat insane, which is fair but still too polite for what it is, an attempt to bully the press into functioning as a transmission belt for executive propaganda. Distraction by design. The speech also works as a shield for a series of failures that the source lays out plainly: a catastrophic policy record, plummeting approval, a war that is driving up gas prices, tax cuts for the rich paid for by cuts to healthcare and food assistance, and a paramilitary force kidnapping people off the streets. Trump's solution is not governments. It is narrative warfare. That matters because distraction is not incidental to authoritarian politics. It is the operating system. When the material record gets ugly, the regime manufactures a conspiracy, picks a villain, and demands that everyone argue on its terms. The real pattern. The deeper pattern is simple. Trump is using the language of election security to prepare an attack on election autonomy. He is using declassified scraps as a costume for power. He is using media intimidation to narrow the space for contradiction. And he is doing it all in the open. This is not confusion. It is pretext. The point is not to prove the vote was stolen. The point is to make future outcomes easier to override, harder to trust, and more dependent on men who think losing an election is evidence that democracy itself needs to be seized. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to Alternet for today's article. With the automated voice of Arctic, thanks for listening.